Okay, well, I'm sat here with Eric Stoller, and you've just been given the keynote at our Faculty of Arts Learning and Teaching Symposium, which is fantastic. What kind of thing were you talking about, people who weren't able to be there?
Yeah, so I was just talking about all the ways in which you could use social media to connect with students, to implement social media into your teaching and learning activities, your personal learning network. Just how do you insert that ethos of lifelong learning in the context of social media? And so, of course, a little bit of humor, some cats, because if you're going to talk about the internet, you have to have cats, and just the tools and channels that are out there and the ones that are coming down the road, because I think that it's often good to introduce various social media properties that people maybe haven't heard of before, just because, you know, there's always an ever-growing list.
And your title for the talk was quite provocative. Why academics must use social media, and clearly you nuanced that quite a lot in the conversations you had with the moderately lively audience, lively for English people, audience. And I kind of wonder what are the kind of barriers that you often meet when people are kind of thinking of social media and education. What holds a lot of people back in your experience?
Yeah, well, with a title like that, it's always a good idea, I guess, to put your audience on the defensive. I'm not sure as a speaker if that's the best thing I could do, but you know, I think the barriers are typical barriers that we've always brought with us, you know, things like privacy. You know, some people choose to share a lot, some people choose not to share anything in their personal life even, and so I think that translates into their profession. You know, some people are just more comfortable communicating via a variety of digital channels, and some people aren't, so that was some of the stuff that we talked about. And then just the personal professional dichotomy. I think that always comes up. People want to separate the two. I think that those of us who have been around a little while, we grew up in a context professionally that was, here's your professional self, here's your personal self. They're very distinct. And social media kind of, these various channels were created and quite quickly have pushed our sort of two spheres into one giant one, and that makes people uncomfortable. I think there's a lot of dissonance there, which I, for one, though, I see that as a good thing, because it pushes people to explore some new ways to incorporate, various ways to connect with students into their pedagogical structures. I mean, I think they're tools, right? You want to do a better job with teaching. You want to increase student learning. You want to talk about outcomes and things like capabilities and literacy. Use the best tools at your disposal in the here and now.
That really brings me on to, I think, a really interesting topic, which is a lot of people, I think, who are not intrinsically against using social media think that, well, it might be good for kind of fun and maybe get my class a bit more kind of loosened up and friendly with me, but really it's just pictures of cats and fun stuff like that. What about actually using it for learning? People see it sometimes, well, it's a kind of good froth and it kind of might make us all kind of get on a bit better, but actually, are my students seriously going to learn anything valuable about the course they've come to university to study?
Yeah, and I think that always comes down to you make it what you want it to be. And if you have social media connections that are all silly and kind of frivolous, or it's always memes, you might learn some cultural things. But at the same time, if you are, let's say you're in the sciences, and you are connected with a bunch of science platform, like CERN or various places who are sharing statistics or research or findings or things that, how could you say that isn't serious? How could you say that the latest, maybe it's an infographic, but it's clearly serious and it has value? One of the comments earlier today was from someone I think who was in creative writing, and they were talking about how they could use social media to enhance the learning for their students outside the classroom by sharing and curating various artifacts digitally with their students. It wasn't necessarily part of the formal syllabus-driven content or things that they're graded on, but at the same time, for those students who want to learn more and be a bit maybe more invested into their particular subject, it was a great way to provide them with more resources.
I think that idea that the life of the course, whatever we mean by that, can overspill the formal 1, 2, 3 hour sessions per week that a module might have is potentially quite interesting. And absolutely, I think the idea that they can connect with serious international scholars in ways they can never do before, and some of them might actually interact with them, is actually for many students surprising. And it may ultimately come to be possibly something that helps distinguish the university experience from the school sixth form further education experience, in that universities can do their own thing with much more freedom, but often with much more kind of depth than perhaps they used to when they were at school.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of things like maturation and transition that happen when someone moves into a university when you're a student. And of course, the things that you used to do, you might still do, but you're going to add new layers. I mean, how often in education we talk about scaffolded learning and sort of building upon layer upon layer upon layer. These social media channels that we talk about, they are just part of that scaffolding, part of that fabric of learning. And so, of course, learning doesn't just happen in the classroom. There's a document that's been used for several years in the US called Learning Reconsidered. And it talks about the fact that the university experience is this holistic experience of in-classroom and outside of the classroom activity that at the end of the day is the sum total of that student experience.
I think that's useful. I hope that some people who weren't sure about social media will have a bit more of an experiment after your session this morning, so thank you.
Thanks. It was a good time.